be surprised. We got dumped on, and it's supposed to be 60 degrees on Thursday, so
Oh,
there's some weather
jeez.
front moving in.
Wow.
But
Okay,
so a light topic for this morning, eh?
yeah. I was trying to figure out, like, I was seeing if I could do a voice memo, but then the phone was saying, oh, you have to end the call to do a voice memo, so now I'm just, doing it on my computer, so I hope that's okay.
Yeah, you bet.
Alright, well, the interview, it has, guiding questions, but I just wanted to give an overview of how our course has been laid out to guide us to answer these questions. We first talked about sort of the source of evil, our I guess, modules about evil and suffering and how God is related to that. And it's kind of brought into questions of, does God exist? Did God create evil and suffering? Is it God's fault that he created people to suffer? Kind of ideas around that. So our beginning modules was what is evil was our very first topic, and then it kind of went into, we read Genesis, we talked about the source of evil in Christian tradition, and then we went into more depth of the Holocaust and should we get, I guess, is it people's fault if they stray away from God because they suffered so brutally? And just looked at a lot of philosophers, and I don't know if you're familiar with Peter Kreeft or Kreeft, I think that's how you pronounce his name. We read Why Bad Things Happen to Good People.
Oh, Kushner, yeah, that was one of the things I was talk about.
Oh, really? Yeah, I thought that was
Awesome.
cool. Yeah, I have never read his book. We read a book by Peter Vardy about evil in God. So that's kind of just the background of our class.
Yeah. Nice.
A lot of the students in my class are Catholic, and I personally do not lean into the Catholic tradition, so I was just very hesitant when talking with people. But I just want to preface that there's no judgment in this talk at all. I just am really curious about hearing your opinions and things. So I guess just an opener question is, I don't know, like, what is evil to you, and who is evil? Those are very broad, but where do you think evil falls into? Do you think it's our free will and choices we make? Do you think it's an active force in people's lives? So just kind of where you stand on that point.
Yep. So I will preface everything I say by saying this is only my experience.
Yeah.
and lots of and growing up, and a combination a little bit of my mom, who was Southern Baptist, and made a distinct decision to move away from that because of all of the things they were saying about evil and whatnot. And then obviously AA, and what that's brought me in terms of me trying to come to a much more practical understanding of all this. And I guess where it's landed me on that question is, yes, it is the result of people's free will, not some force. And it's interesting because I know, like, when we used to go to Tijuana, it was the first time building houses, and it was the first time I heard anyone near to me, and these were like people on the trip, talk about how there are these forces against us. And I kind of ruminated on it, and I can't wrap my head around that. One of the questions that was on that you sent earlier was around, Let's see if I can find it.
Oh yeah, I have them in front of me. They're just guiding questions, but I think they do go into profound depth of
Yeah.
it.
And I think, for me, I like that first part and the way they put it. It's a limitation of would I be, if I could have positive truth, and this is a failing on my own part, I need positive truth or positive evidence. If there was evidence of that, then yes, I'm not saying no, not never. But the way that I function and see the world doesn't line up with some force, just free will.
Do you kind of stem from like, I know faith, the very definition of it, it's kind of just a blind eye, but you believe something's there. Is that kind of the same with, I know, the Gospels of Luke and Matt?
Sorry about that. Looks like my phone switched for a second and I lost audio, but I'm back.
Okay. I was just gonna say, like, kind of the idea of faith is you believe something's there even though you can't see it, and
Right.
you mentioned positive aspects. Do you kind of seek out those positive I guess meanings for yourself, even though it like isn't always there in plain sight?
Yeah, definitely. And that comes from, I guess, like, it's kind of interesting because the way that I kind of have integrated all of these different things is the closest I would say is my concept of God, a higher power, is more close to what the religious tradition would be called the Holy Spirit, where it's just kind of, it's a collective, it's a thing out there, it's not a person. And I know that when I don't seek out other people and their opinions, that everything's just going on in my head.
Yeah.
Probably farther from the truth because I've only got one source of input and it's pretty broken. So when I talk to people, yes, I feel, and like even, talking to people when I go to church, I still go to church. When I go to meetings, when I go to any of these things where this comes up, yes, it feels like it gets me closer to some universal truth because it's not in my head.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember when I first walked into those rooms, the people were like, "Oh, God is my savior. I found God. God is my higher power." And I talked about in the meetings, like I've shared plenty of times, like, I mean, like, we grew up around God and we went to different churches, and I mean, part of me did believe in it in some sort, but I also, now looking back on it, couldn't tell if it was because I was conforming to the majority or if I actually did believe in it, and then coming to terms with, I don't know, I guess being in the lowest state of mind, and a lot of things were in my head, yes, and coming out of that, but then now I'm like, are people really following God because it's they want to follow something? Do they truly believe? And I feel like that's where some of my skeptic ideas come in, of just, are we like praying to have peace for ourselves? Are we just forgiving ourselves? Because truly, I guess, or not truly, but it's kind of settling, or I don't know, I've had a lot of depth. I'm going on a tangent, but a lot of my depth in this class has been, okay, I'm accepting the ideas in the parables and they're teaching lessons, and this might bring me peace, so maybe I'll just settle on this. My mom and I went to a service, actually, the Frank Lloyd Wright Unity Temple on Sunday. That was pretty cool. And yeah, they were the Unitarianism, I think that's the branch, and their whole idea was to accept everyone as they are if they have different opinions, and they talked about real world issues. And I thought that,
Yes.
oh, that's all great, but is it going to get translated to the outside world? And I feel like that's where
Mm,
I kind of have a blind eye to it.
yeah.
But
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I think, and yeah, I'm very much in line with that. Where I think the time that I wrestled with it the most. Well, I won't say that. I wrestled with it the most in college, but the time where my eyes opened a little bit wider was when all of a sudden I read some article that was comparing Christianity to Native American uh, lore
Mm,
and beliefs. And it just, there's so many overlaps if you just use different terms. And then you start looking at comparative religion and what they believe. And you start, well, I won't say you. I started saying, wow, this all feels like there's something out there. And that we all just have a different belief system of what that is. But there are some commonalities across it where you're like, wow. And then, so that was kind of an eye opener. And then everything kind of fell apart for me. And again, I got into my own head, and that resulted in a whole bunch of other problems and drinking and whatnot.
mm-hmm.
And as I was pulling back out of that, that's exactly. I was going to bring up Kushner's book anyway, but I heard some discussion about it, why bad things happen to good people, and the thing that just completely resonated with me was the premise of the whole thing. Well, the premise as I heard it was God is in those things, but it's not the result. It's what people are praying for is comfort,
Yeah.
acceptance, and a way to make sense of all this stuff. But you line that up with what I was getting out of AA, and it was don't pray for results, pray for next steps and clarity about what you should be doing, and get out of the results department, and have faith that it's going to work out the way it should. And all of a sudden, everything made so much more sense. Where I was like, oh, I don't need. My biggest problem was trying to control the world and getting really mad or depressed when the results weren't what I wanted. And all of a sudden, this very practical faith came along that was like, don't do that. Your relation to your higher power is in that comfort part of it, but also the guidance part. And the guidance, as you were asking, comes from other people. And me following the patterns that other people have followed that I know work. And that's kind of the most amazing. And I was literally just talking to John, my sponsor, about this last night. And we were talking about the practicality of, I don't need to know how it all works. And I love, again, that first question you sent, the limitations of the human mind. I don't need to know. I don't need to figure it out. All I need to do is try to line up my next action with what I think should be happening, and then have faith that whatever happens is the result, and I need to accept the result, not try to change it.
Yeah, I like that. Does it ever, I don't know, because God, I do like that point of it's how the people in your life and how supportive they are is how like you won't be so worried in your head. That kind of goes along the lines we just read Luke, the Good Samaritan, and the common message is, oh, love your neighbor. But what I kind of took from it was you need to respect the people around you before you ask for God.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, is ultimately God just sitting in the sidelines, and then we're all doing the work, and then the peace is, oh, if we live this life under God's image, we'll be in his kingdom? Is that just kind of one all and done for the message, I guess. I, I do appreciate that, but then when we kind of go into these questions of, oh, is God at fault for people suffering? Is God at fault for these natural disasters because that's just how the world is? And that's where I kind of get stuck, because in Genesis he created the earth, he created everything, he created man, he put the that's where I don't know, it's kind of like he put the fruit in the garden and they chose to eat it, and that's where original sin comes from. But I don't know, I was getting stuck of, okay, isn't it God then knew what they were going to choose, so what was the point of that? And in the book of Job, I'm just kind of going back and forth, but this is where I just get stuck of, okay, he was just using Job as kind of a transaction to see if Job had faith when terrible things happened to him. And I don't know, it just kind of, for me, falls on the individual and being in a meditative state with acceptance. I don't...
Yeah, and I hear you. And I think that, all those stories for me, again, are that perspective, the Christian perspective of trying to make sense of all of this. And compelling people to do the right thing. And sometimes people are compelled by pain.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're compelled by, trying to do the right thing. And sometimes it's whatever those motivations are, whatever the human condition is. And, I think one of the things that helped me the most to grow in faith, again, because I kind of had set aside the God is omnipotent and controls everything. That the thing I feel now is, yes, I mean, it is a gift that we have free will. And how we exercise that free will drives all of these different results. And the role of my higher power in that is making sure that I use my free will in a benevolent way. And that I have something to fall back on, that when I'm mostly functioning under my own power, which is sometimes dangerous. And on the good versus bad part of it, like my first sponsor always used to say, God's got a plan, it's going to be great. And I just could never wrap my head around that. And now I've come to be like, the thing that I tell myself now still, and this is the thing that helped me in the early days of the program, and now still, is what if? Act as if that's the case. And as long as I don't need to know why. I don't need to know, in order to do the right thing, I don't need to know why. All I need to do is act as if it's true. And everything gets much better. I get out of myself, I help people, and, that's kind of where I end up. Like, I think I started this by saying I have a very practical application of faith now, which is just act as if, and don't try to figure it out. Now, that does not belittle anything of people trying to understand all this through various religious things. I think that's amazing. I wish, like, one of the most extreme examples was our next door neighbor was Mormon. And you live across from a Mormon church.
Yeah.
and their application of it is so different. But boy, some of the things they believe, I just can't wrap my head around. But if you look at what they do for the community and for, in terms of giving back, it's incredible. And it's stuff like that where I'm like, hey, I don't understand. I don't have a brain big enough to say it's like this or like that. Yeah. But I can act as if things and leave it, stop debating it and just do. And that's been very clarifying.
Yeah. I just, yeah, I, I don't know. I've stayed up like all night, just kind of thinking about religion and trying to find meaning. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, maybe I should just cut that short and just kind of accept, I guess. And I do like that idea, but I guess right now maybe I just want an answer. Like
Yeah.
I just want an answer, and I.
Exactly. I know exactly. I remember. I totally remember this one time. I was walking back. In college. I lived like a mile away from campus. It was in the dead of winter, probably like Chicago winter. Lake effect, snow everywhere, and I had this moment of clarity where we had just read Ralph Waldo Emerson's The Oversoul,
Mm.
and it was kind of Christian based, but not really. It was more of a force than anything else. And my first inclination was like, that's what I believe. I believe that. And then my second thought, by the time I got home, was, well, wait a minute. I just completely changed my entire belief system.
Yeah.
Does that mean that lots of belief systems, and not now, I've grown up from that, where I do believe that lots and lots and lots of different belief systems out there. There's some, they're all trying to make sense of some human, and I don't think it was, and so I could sit there and wrestle with, is it or isn't, or is it this way or that way? And I think it's great to wrestle with those things, because every time you do, you probably get a little bit closer to the truth.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily have to. It is a corollary. It is a parallel to how I act. And I didn't understand that until I got into AA, where, and Kim said it to me. Remember, I think I was talking one time about, those moments of growth, and Kim said one time, I was struggling with something. I was talking to her about it, and she's like, sounds like you need a bigger God. Wow, this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Where I had a vision of what God could or would or should do, and who am I to do that? And so the minute you start asking what it is and trying to act as if, boy, the world gets a lot easier. Makes a lot more sense.
Did Kim grow up like was she always super religious and kind of concrete?
No. Very, very opposite. So she grew up without going to any religion. I mean, Greek Orthodox, but they never went. But when she started dating, she started going to church, and she had, and I'll let her tell the story someday to you, but her kind of mentor through that whole journey was this couple. He was a interim priest, and she was just this amazing woman. They actually married us. But they would have all these conversations, and they would, bring her to all sorts of different events and speeches and sermons and whatnot. And it was through their example that I think she learned and developed this incredibly strong faith. And so, for her, she didn't grow up with it, but she came to it, and sometimes that's even more. You see people in these rooms, right, in the AA rooms, where it's like, wow, this person believes deeply, and they came to it through experience. And sometimes that's much more powerful than I grew up with it.
Yeah, I really resonated with that when I first came into AA. I was like, whoa, these people, like, they're straight. They don't kind of try to creep around the corner. They're very straight with their faith, and I did appreciate SPC and but
Foundation.
but going to Sunday school, like, I don't know, when Elena wasn't there, I was like, what's the point? Like, I don't know, because it was pretty cliquey. I I wasn't going to Skyline. I wasn't going to
Right.
Eastside Catholic, and I don't know. I just didn't feel a big connection to faith.
Yep. Yep.
But I did appreciate like the services and things, and I just felt like part of me was thinking, oh, they're just going for the routine. They're just going for a feel good effect. And then when I came to AA, I was like, oh, they like, yes, they played that they were happy, but kind of just then hearing people, life doesn't get better. Life, you're just living it like truthfully, I guess. And
Yeah.
but
Well,
they're still believing in something greater than themselves, which was cool.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say that because that's so. I was a youth group leader, core, and one of three, and we had these group of guys that we went all the way from 8th grade to senior in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And there were three of us, and we covered the whole spectrum. So one of the leaders was very, very strong in their faith, but not necessarily right out of the Bible.
Mm.
And then there was another guy who could quote chapter, verse, point you to it, and was just the most awesome listener and the best questioner, like deep, 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 deep. And he, the guy's got something out of that. And then there was me, who was just kind of the practical guy.
Mm.
And I couldn't quote scripture upside down and sideways like those two. But what I brought was kind of the practical part.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like it takes all of those different views, right? Where I think you're right. Like from my religious upbringing was very canonical, but not a lot of action.
Mm-hmm.
And then more at SBC, especially on trips and mission mission to go build stuff and just hang out with the high schoolers.
Mm-hmm.
That's action, and that was awesome. And then when I got into AA, it was like now I had a focus to that action, which was we got to help each other.
Yeah. And
that put a whole new layer to it, and where before I didn't need to depend on anything, but AA taught me that's what was I need to depend on something, even if it's just other people in the program.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do this by myself, and that I need all three of those perspectives to function. But wow, yeah, it changes, and I just love talking to people about what they believe, and it's hard to do it sometimes with no judgment.
Yeah.
But it is amazing, eye-opening to think about. Wow, like that's what you believe is probably part of the truth too.
Yeah.
And I always use this one guy that very anti-religious, very, very spiritual, and his morning prayer and meditation is holding onto a tree. But you look at him, and I'm like, I want what you have. He believes this so firmly, and he's so serene and so helpful to people that it's like, wow, like that's what this is about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when I was really like someone just turned the thoughts off in my mind, I came to my IOP group, and I was like I processed. I was like, guys, like everyone talks about like stress and sleep and their addictions, and I was just like, oh, I've moved past that, but here's what, like, I didn't say that, but I was basically saying, I stayed up all night trying to find the meaning of the book of Job, and I did it, and I'm disappointed, and I have all these existential questions, and I'm feeling this, and then this guy, he was there because he was a teacher and just got burned out because, the school doesn't allow you to put your mental health before the kids. The kids always have to come first. And he was like, you could kind of see this like fire in his eyes. Like everyone there just looks like they're so depressed and in the depths of it. And he just like this light came on in his eyes, and he didn't give me any advice, but he was just like, "This is awesome. This is what teaching is all about. Um, I'm so proud of you." And I was like, "What?" Like, he's like, "There's this war going on in your mind, and it's amazing, and just keep pursuing that." And like, this is exhausting. Like, but I know. Yeah, it was cool to see that. I don't know. It's someone that kind of evoked them out of their depression, even for like a millisecond. He was just so like, wow, I made an impact as a teacher, which was very cool. But I was also just thinking, I guess part of the other skeptic part of me is like, why, I don't know, people are atheists to 30 other religions. Why this one? Why that one? But I I don't know. I do like um there's these two dads that keep sitting next to me at my Tuesday night, and I don't, not in like a weird way, but they I don't know, they're just like, my God is service, and that's what gets me going. And I don't know, when I hear people talk about God, I used to have like such a judgmental view on them, and I'm like, like they're just a religious Christian. I don't know, but the way they would kind of dive into it was like, I believe in the man above that lets me do service and be grateful and have gratitude. And it kind of just puts into perspective, there's not this like commercialized name that everyone talks about. It's everyone's personalized version of God, which I think that kind of covers it, I guess. But I don't know, maybe like the suffering aspects and all those questions, it's just, that's how the world is, I guess. And like, I don't know, I think some of the debates still stand of, if that's how the world is, did God know and was accepting that it wasn't like, I think the new revelation kind of talks about the universe wasn't permanent, and are we supposed to accept that God was okay with people having, some people losing their faith, some people suffering? Is that acceptance? Where does that play in? But I do appreciate the other talks of as if, or kind of not a religious person, or I don't know if she's religious, but Mel Robbins' theory is you just kind of let them, and that's it's acceptance. So I don't know. I just get kind of stuck on, was God accepting that the universe was temporary, and I don't know.
Yeah, and it's that's why it is so fascinating to go to Bible studies or to talks or whatever, to hear those perspectives. And and there was like even one pastor at church that, boy, like opened my eyes to, like that's what, that's one interpretation of that I always heard these old stories, and then she would interpret it in a completely different way. I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. But the main thing for me was that my eyes would be opened a little bit further. But the main thing is that then I got to go out and act.
Yeah.
And that's what I struggled to integrate, was the stuff that I was believing, and then how belief really, to me, in the end, I really came to see that it doesn't matter what I believe. It matters how I act. And that's, welcome to the rest of your life.
Yeah.
that is a journey.
Yeah, it was funny because my mom's downstairs, but I was pretty stressed out this week, and I don't know, I got some things off my plate, but then she was like, "Oh, is next week gonna be better? Is life gonna look better?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." Like, I can't solve everything. I don't know. It's just gonna keep coming and running, which I think that's what I've been more accepting of.
Right. Yeah. And
you
find new ways to cope with it.
Yeah, my internal locus of control versus the external I can't control.
Exactly. Yep. Well,
Yeah, that
you are
was.
in pain. You are wise beyond your years now. It is
Ugh.
so cool, and just the fact that you get to wrestle with this stuff, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Better to wrestle with it and not have an answer than to not wrestle with it.
Yeah, I know. I would get kind of resentful when, like, I do appreciate that, but when people are like, "It's so great, you're like thinking like this," like, I don't know, the average person doesn't think at all. I'm like, okay, like, thank you, but no, I do appreciate that. Um,
I like what that person said. There's a war in your brain.
oh yeah, I looked that up because when I got my card, when I got out of the therapy program, he wrote that on the card for his
Oh,
like
wow.
goodbye
Yeah.
thing, and I looked it up, and there's a book, so I don't. Maybe it's just a famous quote, but yeah,
No, I get it.
yeah,
We're sense makers, and so we want to make sense of it.
yeah,
And that can be fun, and as long as it's in a environment that you're safe to question and integrate whatever you can to make you whole, awesome.
oh yeah. Thank you. Thanks for talking with me.
You bet. Always fun.
I should go back to Bainbridge. That was fun.
You're always welcome. Come stay. Even better when we have power.
Oh yeah, that's. Do you know when it's supposed to come back?
No, this is one of the longer ones. It's funny that we moved here and they said, "Oh, power doesn't leave that often." And we've had 3 or 4 12-hour to multi-dayers. So,
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
well, it's fun. It's an excuse for me not to work. So.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I remember when ours was out for a week. I was like, what?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, we haven't had anything like that. You all got the scale on that one.
yeah, but you can kind of like go out to the restaurants that have power. But I heard all of Bainbridge is out, so.
Yep, exactly.
Mm.
Well, I hear you have a busy week, so